Hey everyone! So we are talking with the amazing Kevin Allen. We were just talking for a second there before we went on, but he is actually in his lake house up in northern Michigan, right?
No, it's actually west.
Okay, west.
Yeah, I'm actually closer to Chicago now than
Okay.
I'm moving toward Lake Michigan, but
Gotcha.
it's a small inland lake called 3 Mile Lake. But this is what it looks like at my house right now.
Check this out. So that out there, you were saying, are ice fishermen on the lake,
Yeah, we
right?
have two ice fishermen. Usually on the weekends, there'll be 6 or 7 of them, and they're usually not. They're directly in front of my house. There's a lot of good bass fishing right directly in front of my house, and it's funny because what they do is they cut off their trolling motors and they just sort of drift toward my dock.
Right.
That's what when in the spring, and there's a lot of good fishing. Like right off my dock, it gets pretty deep pretty quickly. So it's not it's like 10 or 15 feet deep right off my dock. So not far off my dock, not right at my dock. So.
That's really awesome. I love it.
But I'm excited because I've got my second shot today. So I'm 95%, effective in stopping COVID. Although apparently it's in 2 weeks I'll be 95%.
So, yeah, it takes a little while.
Yeah,
that's amazing. No, that's a good feeling. It's got to be
It's a good thing. That's great.
Well, it is, and I got to give props. I got my vaccinations at Walgreens, and boy, were they organized,
really?
especially today. Yeah, my wife and I had appointments, and we got there. They were moving people out really quickly, in and out, and the whole process for both of us took about 15 minutes. And I loved that they got the little a code that you take a picture of, and then they check in on you during the day. And
they do. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's very cool.
Yeah. So, they just send you, questions about, are you doing okay? What's your symptoms? Blah, blah, blah. So
well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because the second shot can be rough, right? So they're saying.
Well, that's what they say. Although I have the Pfizer, and I'm told now, I'm probably jinxing myself. I'm told the Pfizer causes fewer, but fewer problems than the Moderna. So
now they're saying the Pfizer. I saw an article coming out saying the Pfizer is like 90% effective on the first shot. Apparently, it's really been.
Yeah, I just heard that, and I had actually read the early study said it was only 55. So I guess the more they've tested it.
Yeah, I think that's.
I thought that was the Johnson & Johnson.
No, the Pfizer one. That just came out today. Actually, the article today.
No, with the 55, I think Mike's right. I think that was the Johnson & Johnson.
Oh yeah, they're starting to wonder if the Pfizer, if there should be just a one-shot deal, like that they might be able to,
And I haven't heard anything more about that one that was developed in Israel. Originally, it was a cancer drug, but that was a pill.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, there are a lot of people who don't want to get the vaccine because they're afraid of needles.
Right. Right.
So I mean, if they could develop a pill that would kill this thing.
I never understood being afraid of needles, but I guess it starts when you're younger. But look the other way. I mean, that always helps with any situation.
There was a guy in front of me who was 105 if he was a day. And he walked in there, and his wife came out, and he sort of ambled out, and she said, "Did it go okay?" He goes, "Yeah, he did it. And I didn't even know he did it." I said, "Well, you're going to give me the shot?" He goes, "I just did." So I don't know, even though he was trying to show bravado to his wife of 60 years, he is a one tough man. So.
Cool. So what do we have, gents? Before we quickly.
We can just start the show.
Yeah, the show. Here we go. Perfect. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, February 19th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm freaking cold.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen. And Mike, you live in Buffalo. You're supposed to be cold.
And I am Eklund. Happy Kevin Allen Day, as they say in the chat room. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we talked yesterday about the Olympics a little bit, and the fear of the U.S. boycotting and what that would mean. And I told you that my talks with the NHL and Bill Daly came back that they haven't really approached the subject yet. It is something they're interested in, but they haven't really talked to the PA yet about what they would do if the U.S. were to boycott. But today comes out another Darren Dreger coming out and saying that perhaps the hockey portion of this could be played in North America with the Olympics.
Yeah, that was he on TSN's Insider Trading yesterday. He said that one of the difficulties, and remember the NHL, the PA, and the IIHF are negotiating along with the IOC and about everything that's going on, and obviously with China being the place where coronavirus came from, and what it would mean. We'll see what's going to happen in Tokyo with the Summer Olympics in terms of it being in a bubble or whatever. Drager did indicate that there was a possibility of it, the way he said it, being played remotely in North America, as opposed to them flying halfway across the world to play it in Beijing. Now, the thing is, I'm pretty sure, Kev, they've already built like the hockey arena in Beijing, and it wasn't built for figure skating. It was built I think it was built as in a North American, I think 200 by 85 or 200 by 100. So, I'm sure the Chinese are not going to agree to this when they've, put the cost up to build an arena. So,
and then what do? We send our women, but our men stay home. I don't know. It strikes me is that even though I think it would really be convenient for all of us, it strikes me is that it will be looked upon as arrogance by the United States and the NHL and so forth. But I had not heard that before that, so I don't really have much insight on it.
The only thing I'll say, Kev, because we did talk about this at length, and I had heard some whispers about maybe it being moved. I wonder if we just go with the old-fashioned capitalist approach here, and maybe some outlet in Canada says, you know what, let me talk to Beijing, and let me see if we could buy our way out of this. And maybe there's a way to do that. And you know what?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. Because, look, the rink will get used. Eventually, there's going to be games played in China. They'll play KHL games probably first, and maybe at some point some NHL preseason games. They could smooth that over. But I kind of wonder if they can buy their way out of this. I bet you they can.
Well, the other thing, too, is, regardless of who plays, but more so if it's the NHL, obviously, it's a high-profile event at the Winter Olympics.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big event.
Yeah, so, I don't know how they're going to view it.
Also, how does this change anything? So let's say the U.S. boycotts the Olympics, and stuff like that. Does that change this? if it's being played in North America, do we send a U.S. hockey team?
No, they wouldn't boycott them.
No, but they're boycotting them. No, they would boycott the entire.
No.
Russ, the boycott has more to do with the Chinese government giving the U.S. and the World Health Organization access to Wuhan, because it's just like in 1980.
The difference here is, let's say they did get the game pushed to North America, the hockey part of it.
Right.
I don't think they're going to boycott that. They're not.
Well, see, I don't think you can have a partial boycott.
No,
it's all or nothing.
Right, so I think they would not boycott it.
And if it's
they're not going to not boycott the rest of them. You mean send all the
and if there's a boycott, if there's a boycott, then they're not going to have this tournament in the United States. It'll be probably in Edmonton or in Toronto or something like that, and the U.S. won't be included.
No, but what I'm saying is, if they get wind that it's going to get moved to either Canada or the U.S., I don't think they're going to boycott. I think this would be a situation where they say, all right, you know what?
I think
we're not going to boycott.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with hockey, though, Russ. I don't think they're going to just say, well, we can play the hockey tournament here, so we'll send the rest of our people.
I think it's more complicated, though.
The congressman
more complicated if it
the,
does.
The congressman from Florida, Russ, is not boycotting because they want to play the U.S. the U.S. Olympic Games or the hockey tournament in the U.S. or Canada. They're boycotting because the Chinese government is not allowing people into Wuhan to investigate the origins of the coronavirus. It's just
I get that. Right. I get that. But what if all of a sudden they were playing the tournament in Florida? All of a sudden the congressman from Florida would be like, oh, you know what? yeah, maybe we're a little too harsh on them. You can say whatever you want, but a lot of times these things can change.
I never underestimate the disingenuousness of a politician, but I'm just saying that I think one has, just like the invasion of Afghanistan had nothing to do with the Moscow Olympics. The hockey tournament doesn't have anything to do with it being played in the U.S. or Canada. I
agree with Mike Adell's full statement. Everything he said with the disingenuous politicians.
Yes, I think you're right back to that.
The entire statement I agree with. So
excellent. No, I'm just saying, don't think that this is impossible. I don't think this is impossible.
Believe me, over the last 11 months, nothing that is out there is impossible, because the stuff that we've had to go through over the last 11 months,
Right. The only thing I would say is slightly possible, like as far as rest concept goes. It's more possible that they would just say, okay, yeah, well, fine, we'll have if the hockey's being played in Calgary, say, we'll let the Americans go, hockey players go play, but that doesn't mean that they're going to send people to China. Like the U.S. people are not. I don't think either's going to happen, but I think that it's more possible that you'd have the one thing happen, that they would just say, okay, since this is not, we're boycotting China, not the Olympics, so we're allowing the U.S. players to go play in Canada. But we're not going to let anybody go.
Exactly. I think there's a way to do it.
So are we going to have?
That is my basic point,
Kevin. Are we going to have in 2022 an OAA team, Olympic athletes from America, like we had OAR? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think that they would go for a partial.
Yeah.
Boycott. I just don't see that happen. I mean, it's the hypocrisy of that, the contradiction. I just can't see anybody kind of going along with that.
Because there's never been hypocrisy in the Olympics, right, Kev?
Well, no, there's always been hypocrisy. But in this situation, when it involves a serious issue like this, I just don't see them doing that. But, heck.
But it's about Canada. It's about China, right? So if the games aren't being played, if something's not being,
if something's not in China, I just think there's a chance.
China. Yeah, you could definitely rationalize that out. Like you could rationalize that out that way, I think. However, it would definitely come across as hockey players thinking they're better than other Olympians.
And honestly, it's like what has the biggest cachet in terms of the Winter Olympics? What is the U.S. Olympic Committee going to threaten and say, we're not going to send Eric Hayden Jr. over there to speed skate, but we're going to let our U.S. hockey team play in the Olympic hockey tournament? I mean, the hockey is with figure skating and skiing are probably the two or three biggest.
Mike, all they'll do is, like X said, they'll come up with a rationalization. They might say, hey, look, these are professionals. The other ones technically aren't, so there are amateurs, and we're not going to have our amateurs go.
Yeah.
But these professionals can go if they want. You never know.
But it's you do never know, because the male female problem is
that's another issue. You're right.
I mean,
if they did the female thing here too, I guess. But it's just.
I would bet if they're playing the Olympic men's hockey tournament in North America, that the women's would be played in North America as well.
I would think so too.
I mean, the biggest Olympic event, if I'm right, Kevin, television-wise, is figure skating, correct?
Figure skating is huge. But here's another issue too, that again shouldn't and probably wouldn't be involved in decision making, but. Does the romance of the Olympic Games, does the excitement of the tournament change if it isn't played with everything else in the Olympics? If it's just a World Cup style tournament played in Edmonton or the U.S., it won't feel like the Olympics.
I mean, they're still going to hand out the same medal. They're just not going to have a guy.
Yeah, but there's still a perception and.
Yeah,
I think Ben's right, especially having covered one Olympics, being in Vancouver. There is something about everything being in one place that is majorly important. Like that is a big part of it. That is,
although in the Olympic Games, sometimes things are played miles apart.
Absolutely,
so that happens, but not on a different continent.
But we're also going to talk about an Olympics that may not have any fans, Kev. So everything's different anyhow.
Yeah, how would the golden goal with Sidney Crosby have been if there were no fans in the stands in Vancouver?
It would have been a lot easier to deal with, Mike, as an American. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it would have been fine. Honestly, the excitement around the Golden Goal to me in Vancouver was like getting on the bus, going over to that game and hearing people like singing "Oh Canada" and stuff like that. It was just the whole city was just crazy.
Yeah, I would have put in my ear.
We're still a year out, so we might have fans at the Olympics. So
yeah, I think we do. I think we do. At that point, we might have if we may have more vaccines and enough to do that. It's possible. I mean, you need the entire world to do that.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I agree with you, Russ, on is that we've never seen anything like this, so who knows how it'll play out. But that's just such a major hurdle that
it is a big hurdle.
I just can't see. Just imagine the uproar. If we had the women's team boycotting and the men's team playing.
They just had the biggest uproar just from a press conference talking about these Olympics, Kev, for obvious reasons.
Oh, I know. So,
Kevin, I wanted to ask you a question.
Actually, those were Tokyo, but
I wanted to bring you into the discussion from yesterday because, like I was saying, I was digging into the NHL. And my thing was, I don't know if Rick got the chance to see my article or not, but my concept was the Olympics. If the U.S. was to boycott it, would the NHL still send their players? And if they did allow the other players to go, would the NHL still shut down? These are the questions I asked Bill Daly and he said, there's a fair questions and we haven't broached the subject because we really can't give an answer. So the NHL kind of punched on it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that it would really be a complicated situation for the Players Association. Imagine them, they're saying, Alex Ovechkin just wants to go play. Look, he said, "Look, I'm not going to involve myself in American politics."
Yep.
And I want to go play.
But I did have a workaround for that, Kev. Ovechkin, his contract is up, and he's his own agent. He could sign a contract after the Olympics. He could just not play the first part of the season.
Yeah, but that's Jason Gretzky, and
I know, but
that has its own complications. So
sure,
so all that. Is such an issue, but the Players Association, what's the breakdown? So it's 25 and 50, 75. So we probably have 25, somewhere between 20 and 23% of the players are European.
Right.
And we have 50% Canadians.
Yeah, we're not factoring the Finns, the Swedes, the Czechs, the Slovaks. I mean, everybody.
Yeah, I mean it's still 75%. Like Canada's not threatening to boycott, are they? Or are they?
No. Yeah, I mean they could.
Yes. But so if they're not threatening, they got to go.
But their relations with China are just as strained, especially because there's a very heavy Chinese immigrant population in Canada. So.
Yeah, just giving you a lake update. My wife is now snowshoeing across our lake.
Okay, let me transition from that.
Goes and gets the shots, and then snowshoes across the lake.
Let's transition from that. I wanted to bring this up because we talked about it earlier in the week, Kev, and I found it interesting that Gary Bettman, instead of having his normal state of the game press conference availability when it's either at the game on New Year's Day or
Winter Classic or some outdoor game.
But there was no All-Star game, and the only thing that they're doing in terms of a league event is Lake Tahoe. And instead of doing a press conference where he would have to face questions about what's going on in Arizona, he did an interview with NHL Network where it was basically a bunch of softball questions, like Trump being interviewed on Fox. It's like you're not getting real answers. The Arizona thing is a real embarrassment for this league, and the piece by Katie Strang exposes that. It was a fantastic piece. She did great work. I DM'd her and I told her it was a great job. But I mean, really, this has been a headache for the league for over a decade, and I don't know what the solution is. But they have to do something with that franchise.
Well, they do, but those are two separate issues, though, Mike.
Right.
There's the issue of what's going on in Arizona, and this current owner inherited a situation where they don't have a plan for a new arena, and yet they believe they can't make it work in that arena. That's one issue, and then there's just his behavior once he's become an owner, which Katie Strang is one of the best reporters that covers hockey, and I agree. I mean, her work. It was relentless reporting, and she did just a tremendous job. But And I think you're absolutely right again about how the league looks. And this is embarrassing that they.
I mean, Kev, I basically told Mike they were going to have some sort of something for the Lake Tahoe game. They always do. Bettman will always talk about that, but this is a way that they were able to duck out of those questions because the NHL Network was never going to ask those questions. But the next public thing that the league does, that will be the first question. Like, even it doesn't matter when it is. It could be at the draft. It could be, but it's going to be, it could be the final. It's going to be the first.
It's not going to go away. Yeah.
It's not going away.
And they'll address it. They'll address it before. They'll get ahead of it and address it in their own way.
Oh, I don't know because they're not ahead of it now.
They'll try to do something, but the thing that's so bothersome is, and this is the theme on social media, but in this case, I think social media has it right. They can get carried away, as we all know. They being the tenor of the debate. But so many people have just brought out that you could be sympathetic if this was COVID related. And he was a struggling owner, but it comes across, this is just his business strategy.
Yes.
Like that, to go in and to, get people to reduce their rates by, some form of economic intimidation.
Well, this is what Trump did with all of his hotels.
Right. I mean, Russ knows because he worked for them. I mean, when I read this story, and I'm reading his strategy in terms of getting them to basically get to the point where it's mediation or suing somebody to pay less than 100%. And I'm like, this is what Russ told me about how Trump operated in his hotels. It's like, okay, it's a great business strategy if you want to pay less than 100%, but you're a scum bucket if you do it.
The biggest problem, Kev, was when I heard the other day that Steve Sullivan was gone. I remember saying on this show, I don't know what the situation is, but Steve is such a good guy. I can't believe there was anything to do with him and his behavior. And sure enough, he's not getting paid. He's going to arbitration.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Steve Sullivan has a great reputation, and
but this is another thing now that does the league really want executives who used to work for a team suing that team? I mean,
no, and I feel particularly bad because I've always been sort of pro Arizona, and in terms of I've always wanted them. I wanted them to be able to win and show some consistency just to see if it would work.
Right.
Because we really don't know whether it'll work.
Right.
They had a fan support group when they were in Phoenix, but they had a terrible arena, and it really wasn't conducive to playing hockey. And so they moved out and they put it in the wrong place. And since then, we really have no idea because they haven't been able to maintain any level of consistency in terms of being a good team. So they haven't built up the enthusiasm. Like, let's compare it to Carolina. Where they won a cup. And when anybody who went there the year that they won the cup, when Laviolette was coach and Rutherford was there, you said to yourself, well, this can work here as long as they maintain, a high degree of competitiveness.
Right.
And I think that's true. But we've never been able to figure out, it's like Nashville was always on the watch list for so long. But now we know that will work there, that fans will get behind them once the team is competitive. We don't know in Arizona. We don't have any idea.
Right. And that's it's been a sort of a moving target, Kevin. They haven't been able to find a stable owner all the time. And the thing is, it's not Phoenix or not Arizona's fault, but I almost get the feeling, maybe it's oversimplistic, that area they just can't find somebody who's stable, and that's why I've been in favor of say moving that franchise to Houston, which is just as big of a TV market.
Yeah, I think it's going to go to Houston. We don't know how exactly it's going to play out because there's a lot of moving parts here, but I think in the end it's going to end up going to Houston. That's what I really think.
And now they're in the Central Division. Being next year, they'll be in the Central Division, and having Houston and Dallas in the same division would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with you. I mean, there's some logic to all that. I really had hoped that they would, have a shot at trying to prove that they, that it could support a franchise. And I used to say that the people would complain about, well, it's just so hard to get to Glendale, and for the most part, it's hard to get to every arena and every stadium in sports.
For the most part,
yeah. So but but I guess now, I've been there a number of times, and I guess I could see that the way the traffic patterns are and everything else. But but still, like it's just not easy. Is it easy to get to Ottawa?
No, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Right? Is it easy to get to to Long Island?
No, Nassau Coliseum.
That's one of the worst. I mean, I have to say that Philly is one of the easiest stadiums to get to.
We have it spoiled in Philly.
But the benefit of like Philadelphia is, and this is where Arizona and Ottawa don't have the advantages. Philadelphia has its fans coming from every direction into the arena. So it's like where when you go to Ottawa, you're going out to Ottawa.
It would be one thing if the building in Ottawa was in downtown Ottawa near the airport. First, it's not you go to the airport and then it's a 30-mile drive to Canada.
Yeah, and so everybody's going that direction basically, and everybody's coming back that direction.
Yeah. I want to mention the NHL outdoor games, Kev, because there's 2 of them coming up. I tallied it up. I know you've been to a lot of them. I tallied it up. I've been to 23, and my website's covered all of them but one because my wife broke her ankle the one year that they had the Air Force game in Colorado, and I couldn't get anybody to fill in last minute. But ever since the Heritage Classic, I've been going pretty regularly. And so this one's kind of interesting because we got the Vegas Golden Knights for the first time. You got the Avalanche, who I still think the ice isn't going to slow them down that much. I really don't. I think we're gonna see something similar to Wrigley, where Detroit and Chicago had so much speed going, even outdoors, that I think that game might resemble it a little bit and should be fun. And then with Philly, you're going to have the youngest goalie ever in an outdoor game with Carter Hart, and he's never. Look, I know he's played in the in Buffalo in the World Juniors. It is not the same as an NHL outdoor game. It's not even close.
Yeah.
And so he has no experience for it. And the interesting thing about Rask is, even though this is the revenge match from Fenway, the Fenway goalie for Boston was Tim Thomas. So it wasn't Tuukka Rask.
Yeah.
So you lose. It is funny, and I'm going to enjoy the differences in both teams. But I had some young people asking me last night, Kev, what did I think the difference was between like Boston and Philly? And I said, honestly, the great equalizer is the ice, because you never know how it's going to affect either team, no matter what players are lining up.
Yeah. Well, what I like about this is, I had been writing for a long time that, once they ran out of historic venues, I mean, certainly you can go back. Like I would certainly watch another game from Wrigley or from, from those. And I'd love to see one in like Lambeau Field, playing frozen tundra. But then I said that what they should do then is just go to areas where there's sort of a romance for the game, like in places where you can predict snow. Like I'd love to see one in Squaw Valley. Yeah, I'd love to see one in Vail. Tuck it in.
I thought they were going to do Central Park in New York, Kevin.
Central Park is another one.
So they have that rink there in Central Park. I really think they should do it in Central Park.
So you can watch people get pickpocketed.
Right, and you could do one, in Lake Placid. You could do them, in so many different, that you could go to Alaska. And,
Alaska would be great.
Plunk it, put an arena somewhere and play it.
Yeah.
Because I just think there's still like it sort of bothers me when national columnists suggest that outdoor hockey is played out and it's not novel anymore. It's not played out if you're there. Maybe if you're sitting at home on television, it doesn't have the same zest. You don't have the same zest to watching it unless it snows. We all root for snow, obviously.
Right, all root for snow.
Yeah,
and it is supposed to snow in Tahoe at least one of the days.
But in the areas that host those games, as Russ knows, they're very, very big, and I still think there are places we can go that people will.
Last year in Texas, it was amazing. It was unbelievable how pumped up the fans were. And it was one of the bigger ones too. It was great.
Russ, they could do one at Niagara Falls and say it's in Buffalo.
And you could go to Europe.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of places we could put these outdoor games that I think would still be fun. And I thought the Tahoe was a great choice, and it's kind of a fun deal. I've seen people grouse about it. It's like, what are we trying to do in the middle of a pandemic? Well, we're trying to be entertaining. That's what we're trying to do.
And the fact that there are no fans picking a more remote place is fine because nobody really. Yeah. Everybody's going to watch it the same way.
And I think the NHL did a smart thing in terms of having Vegas and Colorado play each other a couple times before the game outdoor. Because if you watch the one game, it was like a 3-2 game. Fleury gave up a late goal. It was a really great game. It was physical. They're rivals for who's going to come out of the Western out of that division. So I mean, I think they built up enough animosity there that this game could be really good. So
I'll tell you, I like the way Leonard played at the Citi Field game, but I would still want Fleury no matter what for this outdoor game because he has so much more experience. But Leonard did play well against the Rangers in the Citi Field game. He did.
I mean, I think that what's interesting about Lake Tahoe, it is an absolutely beautiful scenario. They put it's on the 18th fairway of a golf course overlooking the lake. It's phenomenal. And
the views are going to be just tremendous.
Trees in the back, the trees right next to the rink, these big giant trees right next to the rink. I mean, it's very much, that's going to be a big problem. As a person
from Dodger Stadium and the fake snow and all of that.
As a person with an outdoor rink, I can tell you the trees are your enemy. So it's interesting to see how they because they drop leaves on your ice all the time. But it'll be interesting to see. Maybe these are pine trees. I guess that's a little different than what we have here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, a lot of needles.
Yeah, but here's the thing that Tahoe is definitely the vacation resort for people in the San Jose area, but we're not. I mean, all the people there have ski houses up there, and my wife lived out there. They all go up there. That's the place. That's their place. But this is without fans, that doesn't matter. And I love the view of it. And you also can't underplay, like the people who underplay outdoor games and they want to talk about outdoor games and the problem with outdoor games is, realizing that, people who grow up in really cold climates, who grew up like, where Kevin lives there, where places, where, what we're actually having here this year, where we've had snow on the
just for a week. We're complaining about a week of it.
We've had snow on the ground for 2 weeks or whatever, in a row, which is like incredibly rare for us. But people who grow up, what they do what you do at night to entertain yourself, and during the day to entertain yourself, is you skate. You go and you find a place, you go outside and you skate, and that's what you can do that's what you can do outside in this kind of weather. That's something that. So the love affair when players talk about how much they the
love affair is real. The players
that they grow up doing. It's what everybody who lives in this area and all our Canadian friends in the chat room can tell you. It's just like this is what you do in the winter to get outside.
The only thing missing this year is they don't get to have like a family skate or bring their families. They probably are not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I've skated on a couple of them. We played hockey on.
I've skated on a lot of them. It's great.
Hockey on one in Philly.
The best ice of all of them. The best ice was the Big House. It wasn't even close.
Philly ice was not good. The one when we were at. We played on that one when Russ and I played in that game.
I didn't play in that game. No. That one I sat out because the Ferraro brothers entered in. I'm like, wait, there are pros in this game. I am not playing in this game.
You mocked me yesterday for my performance. Anyway, didn't even play, Russ, right? Is that true?
I did not play. I sat out.
Interesting.
I watched that game.
Kev, Russ brought this up last week, and then I heard Ray Ferraro discuss this on Toronto radio yesterday. And this is a concern that I think all of us have to focus on. At the end of the year, obviously, writers, PHWA writers, vote on the awards, and some broadcasters. With the reality that they're playing intra-division this year, like Ferraro said, well, other than a few games on the computer, like I've seen Jonathan Huberdeau 2 times so far this year. I'm watching games against the 7 Canadian teams, and I don't have an idea of the broad spectrum of who is playing great. Like, is Couturier playing great in Philadelphia? Should he be a nominee for the Selke? I mean, it's going to affect the voting because you're not seeing all these teams and everybody unless you're sitting in front of your computer monitor watching every game every night. And how is that going to affect like the voting for the Hart or the Vezina or any of these awards? It is a concern.
Well, it's a concern, but it's reality. Like there's no one better in any better position to vote.
Yeah.
It's just, one of those things that, happened an act of God, and we have to deal with it. And we can complain about it all we want, and you're absolutely right that we're going to know less than we know before in terms of the voting. But there's no better option. Like you can't say, well,
Kevin, when you were in the head of the PHWA, what percentage of writers that were in that organization were from Canada versus the U.S.?
I don't have an answer for that. I never even looked at it like that. But
yeah, I was just curious if it was.
I would say there were more. Toronto has a large contingent, and Montreal has a large contingent.
Yeah.
So there's probably a higher percentage, in terms of its representation in the league of the teams. But I don't, it certainly wasn't a majority.
But not everybody in the Toronto chapter gets the vote.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It rotates. There's a certain number. I think it's like 6 or 7. I mean, I've only voted for the Masterton, and I've been in the PHWA for 4 years. But there are other people who vote for all the awards. But I've advocated. I've said I think that every writer should have the right to vote for every award and not just limitations. But I think they don't want to do that, and I respect that. But I do think that it's going to be very challenging this year because I've seen some games in the West, I've seen some games in the Central, but I don't think I have as much of a picture of the quality of those players as I would if they had come to Buffalo and come to Toronto and I actually saw them live 2 or 3 times.
I'll tell you what I think, and I do vote for everything, and I have a feeling it does feel like, and I listen to Sirius XM a lot, I'm on that a lot, and then when you're listening to other things like NHL Network, it does feel like it's an American League, National League situation, where they never used to face each other, and now they're annexed away. And so now all of a sudden the North Division does feel like its own little league. And so that will present some of its own issues. But my feeling is, and as an example, like Austin Matthews is on one of the great goal runs that anybody's ever been on in the NHL.
Yeah.
And so everybody's knee-jerk reaction is, well, he's facing Ottawa all the time. But I just looked up his goals, 11 of them are at home. So 11 of the 16 are at home. And a few of those games are probably Ottawa. But if he's scoring most of them at home, then you know what? I'm not going to look at it differently and say, oh, he plays Ottawa too much. I'm going to be like, hey, that's where he should be scoring a lot of his goals. Yeah, right. And whoever comes in there, he can't do anything about that. So I'm not going to really look at it differently that way. But I think Mike's right in the sense that, do I wish I watched more North games? Yeah, and I'm trying to watch as many as I can.
I watch a lot of them.
The problem that there's no answer for, and you can't correct it. But in this day and age, this isn't the 1950s when, or late 1960s when what was happening in the West, was just a rumor. We all know what's happening every day.
Right.
We're all through this. So it's not like you don't know that Austin Matthews is having an incredible season. And I mean, Ray's point is fair. It's just, we could say, oh yeah, it's tough. It's going to be tougher. Well, but you got to plow through. There's no answer. There's no one out there that can solve our problem.
No, and it shouldn't be easy to vote on awards anyhow, Kev. It takes me hours. I grapple with it a lot of times. It takes me 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes to do it.
We're much more aware of the other teams in other areas than we ever have been. Game Center Live and the Center Ice package has definitely been a factor in that. But I heard something, and in the 80s and early 90s, there were 10 to 15 Leaf games that did not get broadcast on television. So every time they were on the West Coast, we never saw those games. It was
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. No, even a team like Toronto, and they had they had Hockey Night in Canada, and that was about 30 games. They had a midweek broadcast, but there were games but
that might add a week onto your life, Mike, on your lifespan in the end. So
pain and suffering. Okay.
Hey, before you owe it yourself to watch Matthews play if you have Game Center or any package like that right now. He's ridiculous. Also, also needs me mention that Connor McDavid, where this an 80 regular season is on 160 point pace. He's McDavid's point total is ridiculous right now. He's
everybody's point total in the North.
He would have they worked it out yesterday to basically he would have 112 assists if it kept going like this on an 80 games. It's just a ridiculous number. So McDavid is he's tearing it apart.
We should mention Crosby's going to play in his 1,000th game tonight.
Yeah,
and that's a big deal considering all the concussions and everything else. And I'll tell you, I mean, again, with McDavid tying his record the other day, it just shows you like what kind of caliber of hockey we're getting to watch in the last 15 years in the NHL. I always say, like, when I get interviewed about prospects, I always say the NHL of any sport has the best young prospects, and they've been flowing in for at least the last 15 years at a pretty good clip.
Yeah.
And it's not just from the draft. It's from Europe. It's from everywhere. And there really is no end in sight. That's the good news here. And so we've been seeing some great hockey.
I want to bring up, and maybe or maybe not, give some kudos to Eklund. But on we might be doing that. We'll talk about it here. But on our Hockey Debates podcast with Bob Duff, we took a look at each of the division and then talked about where it's at now compared to where we thought it was going to be. And if you go around, there hasn't been much drama. Out west, Arizona's probably been better than we thought they were going to be. So it looks like they're in contention now. Like the top three teams there are pretty well established. We know that Colorado and Vegas and the Blues are who they are supposed to be. And then it's going to come down to Minnesota and Arizona. It looks like the North Division has played out with Montreal and Toronto at top is where we kind of thought they are.
We did think that, yeah.
Yeah, Winnipeg, we thought they'd be sort of in the middle, but they look to me like they're the third best team. Hellebuyck has been the difference. And then it looks like it'll be the Battle of Alberta. But the one division I wanted to talk about is because if you'll remember, our good friend Eklund talked about the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, yeah.
And he was certain they were going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And all of us said, no, we like the direction they're heading in, but they're not ready. Well, this is what I have to say about that now. I've watched them. Now, obviously, they're behind in the games played because of COVID.
Right.
But that division now, Boston, for those of us who thought they were going to take a half step back, and that's me. I got my hand raised.
Yeah, me too.
Because I thought Zdeno Chara's loss and we were all wrong. Boston is Boston.
Yeah.
But it's a mess there in the middle. And
it is a mess in the middle.
And New Jersey has shown that they can play in that mess.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're going to make the playoffs, but I also don't know that they won't. They've before I knew they wouldn't.
Well, and now I still don't think New Jersey will hang with Washington or the Islanders. I don't. So their best shot is they get that fourth spot, which does seem to be in play. I don't think the Rangers are going to battle for it. The Flyers will battle for it. And so I don't think they can beat out the Flyers. I'll be honest.
It's against my soul and my conscience to ever agree with anything that X says.
Yeah. Well, normally, and Eklund, you bring this on yourself because you take such flyers on things. But
he does.
But you might be right on that. I mean, my only point is, and again, I don't know, because it's a mess in the middle there. And the Penguins have been, as hard as this is to believe, they've actually been better since they have a new GM.
They have been better.
Hockey operation. So they're 3-1.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've watched the Capitals, and there's trouble there.
There's trouble there with goals.
They just called Samsonov back up today.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's, I don't like the quotes coming out of him about how he still feels. And
I mean, that ATV accident, I always told people, don't underrate that. We never knew
how
bad it was.
And the COVID.
And the COVID too, yeah.
Yeah, the COVID. So, so anyway, I just think there's enough issues that, I'm upgrading my New Jersey status because I do like the job that Tom Fitzgerald has done there.
Yeah.
Probably won't make it to, I don't know, maybe.
My big thing is that they could finish ahead of the Rangers, which I think that was everybody laughed at that. That I think is something that I do think that they will do, and I also had them ahead.
I think we laughed at that one, but maybe
Capitals too. Obviously, when I had them ahead,
Capitals I laughed at.
Well,
yeah.
I still think that that's possible too.
It is still very early in the season. We're not even in the season yet.
The issue, the issue, and I discussed this with Russ. The issue with the Rangers here has been the misuse of their young players by David Quinn, and Russ can talk about more.
I tweeted about it last night.
Go ahead.
I'm going to just lay it out for you. I saw this happen with Barry Melrose in Philly with Steve Stamkos. I wrote about it, and last night I tweeted again because yesterday. Here's why. And Kevin will probably agree with this. Here's why reporters still show up at games, even though they can't get in the locker room. Because you're not seeing everything at home that you think you're seeing on a broadcast. You're seeing what the cameraman is seeing, and then what the producer says should be shown to them as a narrative to talk about in the game. So, like last night, Alexis Lafreniere, who I watched very closely, and I had the Rangers end to my end twice, played a good game. He actually played strong along the walls. He made a couple of really good passes, and he played some good defense in center ice. But you don't get to see those things because it was really like a 2-second play, and it's away from the play, and the puck's going the other way, and you're not seeing a lot of that. So he had a good game. He still was playing in that game with muckers. He's playing with Rooney, and he was playing I forget who was on his wing, the other wing. But anyhow, it wasn't a good line. It wasn't the same as when they played with Strome, Kakko, and Lafreniere. Maybe once in that whole game, he got a shift with Panarin. That's it. But at the end of the game, this is what I had issue with. We're in overtime. The only game-winning overtime goal on the New York Rangers is Alexis Lafreniere. He has the only game-winning overtime goal on the team. And there was a moment where there's a stoppage in play. He hasn't been in the game yet. It's about 20, 25 seconds to go. It's in the Flyers' end, so it's an offensive zone start for the Rangers. Lafreniere gets called out onto the ice. He's setting up. It's a TV timeout. All of a sudden, they wait for him at the bench, and he comes off, and he never gets a shift. He gets spoken to on the bench, and then his body language was sort of like slumped a little. Like you could tell he was bummed out because, he just lost an opportunity to maybe have a chance of winning the game, which would be nice for a good young player. And instead, nothing happens with the Rangers. It goes in overtime, and they win. But it was a lost opportunity, Kev, for a guy who – that's the kind of position you want to put a young player in, a position to succeed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Eventually they figured out how to deal with Stamkos, and they started spotting him and giving him more playing time. And then, there was discussion. This is after Taka took over. But don't you think that's the hardest thing that a coach has to master is how
it is, but you have to do it.
No, yeah, for sure. And if you get it wrong, it slows down the development.
Yes.
So I agree with you, and that's if you're John Davidson and you're watching all that, you're probably wondering,
Right.
Yeah. I'm watching a Ranger game a couple nights ago, and I'm seeing Phil DiGiuseppe and Colin Blackwell.
That was the other winger.
And I'm like, where the hell are the young? Where's the hell is Kakko? Where the hell is Lafreniere?
They put Rooney out on 3-on-3. I was like with Lindgren, who's not offensive either, and I'm like, why are these two guys in a 3-on-3 situation when neither is offensive?
No.
Do you feel like they're playing not to lose, Russ? That's what I felt like.
I do.
That's what I think. Quinn is coaching not to lose. I hate that. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, and he's doing it right now. Like you can see it clearly.
Well, here's one of the issues that's going on. And Russ just said this, and I didn't have time to get in there, but it's been my sort of pet peeve with writers talking about it's early. Some teams have played 20 games. That's 35% of the season.
It is.
Like it's not early.
Yeah, everybody except Buffalo and New Jersey are past the quarter pole,
but a lot can happen in the next 20 games. That's
sure. Well, for sure. But we're at 35%. You've played a lot of the season. For some of the teams that have played 20 games. And
I have to say that Ottawa is its own particular disaster because they're a young team and they're playing against a lot of teams that are really high-powered offensively. So it's going to be a rough year for them. But the biggest disaster right now in the NHL is the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, right now
hard to argue.
They're 4-7-2. They were ravaged by COVID. If anybody read the story today from Sammy Hoffman, who I know from being in Toronto, about Rasmus Ristolainen and what he's going through in terms of COVID, he's he is completely weak. He's having problems with chest pains and heart. I mean, they don't know when he's going to be back, and he was a mainstay on their blue line. But more than that, they're just a complete disaster on the ice. And then we hear yesterday that there's mutual interest between Taylor Hall and the Sabres to an extension. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Kruger's there. I understand why Hall would want to play there. He probably likes playing with Jack Eichel. But Kevin Adams, if you're going to sign Taylor Hall to anything close to the $8 million salary that he's making right now, what are you going to do about Jeff Skinner's $9 million contract? What are you going to do about the $6 million contract for Kyle Oposo that has 2 more years? They've got so much. I mean,
you should never have 3 $10 million players. I think even the Leafs would rethink that if they could.
Well, I mean, but $9 million.
I don't think so. But
yeah.
All right.
No. I mean, I don't think
it's too much to allocate. You have to have so many good young players to offset that. It doesn't hurt you in one season, but it does hurt you down the road. It does.
Russ, the only way that the Toronto model is successful is if you can get players to come into Toronto making $700,000.
Right.
Which they started to do this year with Thornton and with Spezza. If they can continue to do that, then you can split it up where, okay, I got a $10 million guy here, I got a $700,000 guy here.
It's a battle though.
Right, it is a battle. With Buffalo, they have $35 million in cap space next year, but Skinner on the 4th line is dead money, and Oposo at $6 million for 2 more years. He's not even close to the guy they thought they were signing. And they probably, if they weren't completely averse to buying out players, Oposo would be a good buyout candidate. But the Pagulas won't buy anybody out. But the whole point of here is, Taylor Hall, okay, $8.5, $9 million on a long-term deal. You're nowhere close to winning. I don't
think he's signing there, Mike. I think they're having a conversation. I think he's still going to go to Calgary. But there's this other conversation that's been going on, like, hey, there are teams that have interest in Jack Eichel, and is Jack Eichel really saying things behind the scenes that he might want to be traded? That's the other thing, because now all of a sudden teams like the Rangers and other teams are getting drawn into this conversation. But again, I go back to do you really want 3 $10 million players on your team for a period of 6 or 7 years? I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have any of them, and none of them can be anything subpar.
They can't be. They
have to be your 3 best players. They have to be like outstanding.
Like everybody is paying a lot for their top 3 players.
Yeah.
Like that's not outrageous. And I don't fault the Sabres for trying to. You're not doing your job if you don't try to re-sign Taylor.
Yeah, right.
It's up to him to say
they're already out there.
Isn't good enough.
But if they re-sign Hall, Mike's point is a good point. You might be able to lose one of those salaries, but then the drafting and development, which hasn't been good in Buffalo, is now that's got a microscope on it.
Should Buffalo just say, "I give up"?
No. But
we got Skinner.
Right.
It's such a drag on us, and we got Okposo. So we're not going to do anything.
I know, but what I'm saying is there's more pressure now on Cousins, on Casey Middlestat, on anybody else that's in their system, asking guys who haven't developed.
You're stating the obvious. So what's the solution then?
Well, the solution is they have to get better.
Mike just said they shouldn't try to sign Taylor Hall. So would you say, okay, so what's your solution then if they're not going to try to sign Taylor Hall?
The solution is fix what's wrong on the inside first with the player development and the drafting, and then worry about signing the big ones, because they're not close to being ready.
My point is, if they try to sign Taylor Hall, they have to get rid of one of those contracts, which I think is virtually impossible unless they buy out Oposo. This is what I don't get about the Sabres right now. I mean, there is room for criticism of Jeff Skinner because Jeff Skinner is playing on the 4th line, but you've got a guy making $9 million. You would think you would want to maximize his value in terms of put him on the 1st line, put him on the 2nd line, put him on the 1st power play. The guy scored 40 goals when you did that. And they're burying him on the 4th line with Curtis Lazar. And, it may be an internal thing, but Ralph Krueger is not maximizing the value and the contribution of Jeff Skinner. And I don't know why anybody like Taylor Hall would want to sign in Buffalo, but the reason is because he's playing with Eichel.
But my only point is this. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't you try anyway? I mean, shouldn't you try? You're criticizing. It reminds me of what Dale Talon said.
Yeah.
When he said, I ended up getting guys to come, and I was criticized like crazy for overpaying. What are you doing, you crazy man? But before I signed players, I was criticized because I never did anything. So,
no, I mean, sure, there is some of that.
We sit here and analyze it the way we analyze it.
I think you try to sign him. I agree with Russ. He's likely not to sign there because you know what? He's going to talk to Eichel and find out what Eichel's going to do. And if Eichel, wants to leave, that's going to be an issue. Would it be a hardship on him? I think they're going to have to. The Nashville Predators never bought anybody out either, but they gave salary to get rid of tourists.
Right.
And, that we could see something happen with Okposo. But the Skinner problem to me looks like Skinner's problem. Like, I think the 40-goal season was an outlier.
Yeah.
No, it was an outlier, but he is better than what he's doing now, too.
Well, for sure. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how many goals
must be something. Think about this for a second. We only see so much of this, and I always hesitate to criticize certain things. Like, obviously, Krueger is hearing this from his GM and his owner about Skinner as well. Like they're saying there, the owner's saying, we're paying this guy all this money. Why is he playing on the fourth line? The GM's saying, there must be something else. There must be a reason that they're putting him on the fourth line. Like Russ and I watched the play, and we're like, Skinner seems to be working hard. Seems to be trying everything he can try on the fourth line.
Hard. He was skating well.
Right. That doesn't mean we still have the whole picture. You know what I mean? It's really tough to see the entire picture. And with the Taylor Hall situation, to me, this is the time to do it because otherwise you're going to move him at the deadline. Like you're going to move Taylor Hall at the deadline if you don't sign him now. So go for it now, try now, do everything you can now. And if not, give yourself as much time as possible to get yourself the best deal you can because the sooner you can move him, the better because you get more for him.
But he's got a no move clause, so if he doesn't want to go anywhere,
that
he's going to go. Yeah,
he's going to go. Of course, he's in his contract year. He's going to want to play for the Stanley Cup. He's going to want to go out there.
Here's an interesting thing. So if you look at Jeff Skinner's career numbers with Carolina, he's 0.35 goals per game. With Buffalo, he's 0.35 goals per game. That's what Jeff Skinner is. That's what he'll be if you move him off the fourth line. Like he is very consistent, but the coach is killing his offensive ability right now.
Well, this is my only point on all that. Yeah, GM 101 is when you have a player like Taylor Hall, you go to him and say, can we get you to extend? And in this case, he said, well, let's at least talk about it. But all of us believe he won't do it, but he is going to be open-minded and try to talk about it. And as Eklund said, eventually it's going to break down, and then they're going to say, well, we'd like to move you. And he's going to say, well, you can only send me to these three teams. But if he doesn't do that, then he's guilty of not doing his job. So my only point is I don't think you can criticize the Sabres, who, I don't want to defend because their situation's a mess.
Yes.
But I don't think you can criticize the GM for doing what he's supposed to do, which is try to keep good players. So,
but the other thing
Hall talking to him is just Hall being professional, which Hall has always been professional.
And Adam's doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, right. Right. So I think
it's his fault that Skinner's.
No, but Skinner has had his ice time cut. He's not on the first power play, and he's on the fourth line. So the only reason I talked about Skinner skating well is because Eck and I saw the effort, but you could only do so much with the Buffalo fourth line.
It was pretty striking live to see.
He wasn't on the fourth line last year.
So. No, he was on the second line. But here's and this may be the genesis of why because Krueger wants him to play more responsible two-way hockey. Jeff Skinner, except for his rookie year, has been a minus player every year of his career except one, and that was the year he scored 40 goals. Every year he's been a minus player. So they clearly think that he's a defensive liability. If that's the case, why the hell did you sign him for $9 million a year? That's
because they thought they had their guy to play with Eichel. That's what they thought.
That's true.
And then they immediately took him off the line with Eichel.
Right. But that's why they did it. I mean, you ask why they did it. When you have a star, you need to find that guy to play with him.
Yeah.
They thought,
and Adams didn't do it, and now he's stuck with them, and now he's just trying to figure out. Well, I've got to just set this guy apart because it's not working, and I got to try to build the rest of the team. So.
I do have one more big subject here, Ek, that I think Kev would like. And then if you have something else, I'm sorry.
We're going to have to go pretty soon, but let's start this rest.
It'll be quick. But Kev, basically at this point now, with Florida, as of the other day, Glenville had 2 5-1 goalies, Bobrovsky and Chris Dridger. And Chris Dridger seems to be the number 1 goalie now. And that's a big problem for Florida. Even though they're doing great right now, it's going to cause a problem somewhere down the line.
Yeah. And with Knight there, and waiting to find out where he's going, that just makes it even worse.
If he goes there, what if he stays in school now based on the situation?
That's a possibility. So I think that's bad. And Florida's playing so well. Like
they are.
When they met, like Florida versus Carolina was a huge game. Number 4, number 5 in the league, and both teams playing well. And it was it was a good game. Florida came from behind. Like Florida's probably and I say this just because the GM mentioned this to me the other day. He goes, "Is it just me, or is Florida the biggest surprise in the league?" And I said, "Yeah." And
they are right now.
I think a lot of general managers are hoping for a get out of jail free card or a compliance buyout, because I think there's no way. Like if Bobrovsky is making $10 million 2 years from now and playing not badly, but playing not up to the expectations, or Jeff Skinner is making $9 million and not contributing, it's paralyzing to these franchises.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to see compliance buyouts. They had
so either.
They had no appetite to do it when things were going bad in the league. I don't think when things are going better, they're all of a sudden going to do it.
Yeah,
they'll just raise the cap level. They'll raise the cap. That's what they'll do.
Yeah, that's what they'll have to do. They'll have to do that. All right, well, that's all the time we have, guys. But Kevin, thank you very much for joining. Yep. Wonderful to see you again. Wonderful weekend, everybody out there. Enjoy the games. It's supposed to be really warm on Sunday in Tahoe, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how the ice handles that.
Starting an hour early, 2:00 now Eastern.
Yep. I don't think it'll be that bad, though. 43, 44 degrees. That's not bad for hockey.
That's not bad.
Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you on Monday.